I found some things, and I found it a couple of years ago, and I've had it on this list of my projected foods to eat and to consume. So I want you to look at things as an analogy. It's easier to teach that way, to tell a story. Say you're in a car and you're riding along, you got your oxygen, you got your iron, and your car made of iron, and all of a sudden you see in your rearview mirror, you see some blue lights. So what happens when the blue lights come on? It stops you from moving. It stops you from doing whatever you was going to do before the blue lights came on. So what happens when the blue lights turn on in your body? When everything shuts down the same exact way. You're not going to receive oxygen in certain levels. The heme is not going to be able to produce light anymore, so therefore it's turning blue. Blue lights are turned on in your body and it's not receiving oxygen. So that means there's low oxygen. And what carries oxygen around in our body into our lungs and gives off carbon dioxide? That's called hemoglobin. And heme has an important factor, an important property to know, that it emits a light. Now every element in this universe has this spectroscopic emission. So every element inside of our body, whether they're doing an MRI scan, which is a magnetic resonance imaging scan, it displays different hot areas of different places that does not have oxygen. So these places in the liver that handles our detoxification are not receiving certain levels of oxygen. It's becoming very low. So what I want to talk about is this specific fruit, raw fruit, whether you juice it or not. It has a bioflavonoid in it, and that bioflavonoid is called naringenin. Naringenin kind of affects certain metabolic pathways in our detoxification phase 1 of our liver. Now when you hear the word detoxification, that's something I've been doing for the past 4 years, letting people know on how to properly detoxify. Now in phase 1, which some people inhibit, they have these inhibitory effects by eating certain foods. Just like when people swallow certain medications or prescriptions, they have an effect on their detoxification pathways. Now this pathway, 90% of this pathway involves the metabolism of bad fats, bad neurotransmitters, bad hormones. So these are like toxins, and you need to be able to renew. Now, if we get too many hormones, then we become emotionally imbalanced. If we get too many neurotransmitters, we become maybe an overload of dopamine may make us schizophrenic, or too little of something will make us depression, or too much of something become too anxious or anxiety. These are the things that when you go to the doctor, they actually diagnose you with certain ailments like that and put you on these type of medications. So I'm gonna go over all of this and how to get rid of these chemicals that like to hide in fatty tissues. Now I said the bad fats has to be detoxified, which are lipids, and neurotransmitters, which are proteins. They have to be detoxified also, because you don't want to have bad GABA, bad serotonin, bad dopamine, bad hormones like estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. You want to be able to get rid of those bad chemicals, because we got 100 trillion cells that has to go through these metabolic pathways. And in that metabolic pathway, there is a cleansing system called hydroxylation. Hydroxylation is just the breakdown with water. Just as a recap from that video, I talked a lot about this cytochrome P450 enzymes. Now, they contain heme, which is a part of our hemoglobin that likes to transport and carry oxygen. And we know that hemoglobin has the ability to absorb and emit light. So this cytochrome, which cyto means light, has this range of 450 nanometers that emit this color in blue. That's why I wrote this up here in blue. Now this shows up on this resonance imaging screen, this spectrograph of, like I said in the video, it turns the police lights on. What happens when the police lights turn on? That color spectrum indicates that there's problems within the phase 1 detoxification liver cells. Now during the phase 1 detoxification, P450s are what we're going to just call them. And they perform two functions. Number one, they make toxins more water soluble. Then they convert that toxin into a less toxic molecule, making it less reactive to our proteins and our DNA. Now these molecules are then transported by our blood through our kidneys via this urea cycle. Now notice, I put oxidation right here as our very first pathway. And it's not necessarily in that order, but I find that it being the most important pathway to go through. Now, our atmosphere has 20% oxygen in it. And we are constantly being oxidized externally. Our skin is our first layer of defense. And internally, we are trying to combat with that oxidative stress to reducing that stresses. So I put up here oxidation and reduction. One of the molecules are trying to oxidize, and then the other one is just trying to reduce. So they work kind of in hand. They're always trying to get to balance. That's why we need antioxidants to calm things down within our body. Now, oxidation and reduction is basically the process of, let's say, the process of electron transfer, because one molecule gets away from one group and then it tries to go to another molecule, and that causes another damage going over, making oxidative stresses in a certain area. Maybe it's your lungs or certain things like that. Where does this electron transfer cause the oxidative stress? Where does it come from? It comes from what they call free radicals. Now, free radicals are not that bad. They actually help our body defense systems. And we're going to talk about that. But some of the substances that can cause free radical damage, which is a major cause of inflammation, disease in our body, we want to keep those things at a very low level. So some of those substances are alcohol, our saturated fats, let's say paint fumes, combustible things like smoking. Oh yes, got to go into smoking. Pesticides are in there. Even caffeine. Those are toxins that have to be metabolized due to this phase 1 detoxification through oxidation. So first one, best way for me to explain oxidation is when a person drinks alcohol. It has to absorb it. That's why it happens in like 20 minutes. The stomach starts to absorb it. It has to absorb it, then the liver activates its oxidating system. It creates more heat to burn off that alcohol. So it turns into, let's go here. Alcohol turns into ethanol. Then ethanol is being oxidized some more, turning it into aldehyde. And we then enter a new section of oxidation when it needs a lot more water to be able to dilute that alcohol. So we use the hydrolysis pathway here. So we use more water. We break off more oxygen and hydrogen to hydrolate these aldehyde even further down. So we're trying to get that down to what they call a carboxylic acid. Now, I know these terms may not be so, you may not know it, but go ahead and go to the worksheet. Like I said, it explains a lot more, but just as a little rough draft, I need you guys to know how alcohol is being broken down within this oxidation process. And then it's able to turn into water. This carboxylic acid is basically called acylic acid. So this is, I'll spell it here. Acid. This is the acid here. Now, these two work hand in hand, like I said, hydrolysis and hydration. That means they're more able to make more water. It's a process of creating adding more water to break things down. We have to make things more water soluble. That's what the purpose of this means. And we got to break it down in areas that hold more fat. So we're talking about fat soluble toxins here. Fat means lipid. You don't understand. So we're talking about lipid soluble toxins. So smoking or saturated fats. We know that, things can get trapped in our fats, like lead and other toxins that like to build up in fats. Fibroids build up there, cysts build up there, because it's all a lymphatic pocket of fat that is starting to build and it's not being metabolized. We can have thyroid problems. We can have tumors that grow in certain areas that, even in our brain. Saturated fats controls our hormones, people. This is how a building block for our hormones. So keep that in mind. I talked about it in our hormone biosynthesis video. I will go further in the future about how hormones can cause a congested liver. Now, in other liver detoxification methods that I talked about previously, class, we always talk about cytochrome P450s. This time I want to talk about some aminotransferases. And they are the ones that you see on your blood tests when you get your full blood panel indicating whether or not you have elevated liver enzymes or that can actually go along with high HDL or LDL. I didn't put those up here. I was in a little rush making this little board because a lot of times all of this stuff is on the top of my head. But HDL stands for high density lipoproteins. So if your HDL, these are the bigger cholesterol that they're looking at, if that is high, then if these are high, I'm gonna say the range right quick. The range is around, I don't want them over 60 milligrams per deciliter. All right, you don't want to be over that range, and that's for your HDL. These are the ones that you can see up under electron microscope, very big. The ones that you see called the low density lipoproteins, you call that LDL. They should be less than 100. It should be less than 100. They're also going to be looking at on the blood test. So I've already put up here, I'm going to tell you what these mean as well, but I'm just trying to let you know that they're looking at a couple of things before they start administering these statin drugs. Also, any other type of antibiotics that can be caused by bacteria. So that's why I always say you got to do parasite cleanses. That can also be detrimental to the liver as well, and also the kidneys. But there's a lot of things that's going on with this. Before I even get there, there's a big one, triglycerides.
your triglyceride levels are very important. And these can also rise or increase if you eat a lot of fructose. So we talk about elevated levels on the blood test. Now the triglyceride levels don't need to be over 150 milliliters per deciliter. So those things are stuck in my head when I see clients come through with their blood tests. And if they are over these levels, the enzymes are high, the cholesterol is high, the triglycerides are high, we have to change over a complete diet. We have to make sure that they're eating their 5 cups of green leafy vegetables. Your green leafy vegetables will have a lot of magnesium, potassium, calcium, sodium. They have a lot of the B vitamins as well. And one of the specific B vitamins that is known to lower cholesterol, that can lower the HDL and LDL, is this pantothenic acid right here. So we sell pantothenic acid, one of the only B vitamins that is known to lower cholesterol. That will help you get back in order. Not only that, we're getting B vitamins all throughout the day, and it's used as a cofactor to create energy. It's used as a cofactor to break down glucose, and that is very important because a lot of times if you are a type 2 diabetic, that means your insulin could be high, your high A1C, and you also have trouble getting glucose into the cell. So type 2 diabetes, I need to write that up here. You can get non-alcoholic steatohepatitis by being a diabetic. Diabetes type 2. And basically high cholesterol. With that being said, that also hits our triangle. Now, I've always talked about how do you get off of these drugs. This works in a cycle. So if you have, I'm going to draw this little triangle up here so you can see what I'm talking about. I did this in our blood pressure class to let you guys know that this is how this loop works. If your sugar's high, this is your sugar. It's on one side. If pressure's high, that's your blood pressure. And this is going to be your stress. This is your cortisol levels. So, all of these are handling hormones. Hormones are made from cholesterol. You guys heard me? Hormones are made from cholesterol. Why is sugar dealing with hormones? Because it's dealing with insulin. It's dealing with insulin. All right. What is stress dealing with? Cortisol. And what is blood pressure dealing with? A whole bunch of hormones. I'm talking about the RA system, which is renin-angiotensin pathway. The RA system, you may be dealing with corticotropic hormone coming from your adrenals. There's a whole bunch of hormones that blood pressure deals with just by itself. So type 2 diabetes is very important when it comes to getting fatty liver or non-alcoholic liver disease. So we want to get their blood sugars in order. We're going to get the stress in order. We're going to treat them just like they have diabetes with fatty liver. So their enzymes will easily be high. ALT stands for alanine aminotransferases. And these basically can be lowered by certain proteins in the cycle of certain proteins inside of the cycle, the CD cycle in the liver. So there's a one called CD36. It will definitely lower these two. All right. So in order to get there, there's like cell differentiation going on in there. There's a lot of biochemistry that is going on inside of these hepatocytes and different proteins. Certain proteins are able to lower your enzymes. Okay, they go through certain pathways, like say for instance, ALP stands for alkaline phosphorylase. That's what it stands for. It stands for a phosphorylation pathway that happens in your biliary system. So that's what I wanted to get into, the biliary system. If this is clogged, biliary system. If this system is clogged, you're going to have some gallstones. And that happens to deal with ALP. If you see this being high, this number higher than 147, all right, if it's higher than that, you got some gallstones in there. I'm going to take you to the Shalom Health Services website, and you can go download the liver flush protocol, and that will help you get rid of those gallstones. This system, this phosphorylation detox pathway, actually becomes high if your thyroid stimulating hormone is high. So this also goes hand in hand with those who are hypothyroidism. And I found that even with this side, you can use, where is my green pen? You can use things like iodine and clear out those gallstones, and your thyroid and your liver can go back into balance. So you can use iodine for ALP, and you can also clear out the gallstones with those two things. So a way to lower ALT and AST, I didn't go over what proteins do that, but certain herbs, guys, certain herbs like burdock root, certain herbs like, I can put up here all these cholagogues. Cholagogues is the name of the different herbs. Classification, things like, this is milk thistle, guys. So milk thistle. We got things like burdock root, and we got dandelion root. All right, so we got other ones like things that are anti-inflammatory, like what I use inside of my formula. I have to use anti-inflammatories because we got to get the inflammation down. We definitely have to get the inflammation down because we're dealing with fatty liver, we're dealing with cirrhosis, and it's hepatitis. So every time there's inflammation of the liver, you got to get you got to start using anti-inflammatory foods. So turmeric is one of those. One of the best foods to use, let me write this down, is artichoke. Jerusalem, let me see if I can spell it right. Artichoke. Artichoke. I spelled it too well up here. But you get what I'm saying. Jerusalem artichoke. Certain compounds that is very important in milk thistle, because this is a very known herb. Everyone likes to use. I mean, I talked about it in our herb of the day video, and they really love to use these milk thistle because it has multiple different functions in the liver. They used to use it for snake bites back in the day. They used to use it for just detoxing the liver. And that's what we're using it for in these modern times today. Because of these traditional healers found out about this magical compound called silymarin. Now, silymarin is a compound. It's not really just the main phytochemical. It's made up of 4 different chemicals, okay? So I believe it's all psilocybin. I don't want to say psilocybin. Psilocybin is from the mushrooms, the shrooms family. Psilocybin. So you should have at least I'm gonna give you the standardized amount that should be inside of the milk thistle. Salicylate diane, D. We also got isocyanaline, and we have silicristin. And I'm surprised I remember all of those because they make up 70%, all right, of all of the silymarin that's here. So you should have at least 70% inside of a seed. These are the actual seeds, and I'm going to show you guys how to use those seeds. But if you were to mix that together with all of these different herbs and start eating those, that's what's going to bring the ALT and the AST down. That's also going to bring down the HDL, the LDL, and the triglycerides down. This creates a healthier a way to reverse. All right, so I'm going to give you a method because I've used the N-acetylcysteine before. Because if you use N-acetylcysteine, why we would use something called that? I'm going to give you a little history of what's going on with NAC. It is a supplement I talk about for mental health conditions, but it's also a supplement that deals with boosting the glutathione levels. And the glutathione levels are basically your master antioxidant. So what do we need for a person that has fatty liver to get the inflammation down? So if you build up the main antioxidant inside of the liver by using a precursor or a cofactor called N-acetylcysteine, already in its biochemical form, you will be able to boost glutathione. Glutathione is heavily, it has a high affinity in your liver and in your lungs. So that same person that has type 2 diabetes, the same person that has fatty liver, they need to go through some intermittent fasting. Because your insulin levels are continuously stay high. So it's a good thing to do some alternative intermittent fasting or put yourself in a time restricted window. Meaning, I start eating at 10 o'clock a.m. and I stop eating at 5 p.m. All right, nothing outside of those areas except water, and that would be it. Or you can choose alternative intermittent fasting. This is a time restricted window. And we're going to say you can make it even smaller, 11 to 5, if you choose to. And that gives your body the energy of 18 hours of not just only metabolic energy, but energy that you can use for healing. Okay, so we need to revitalize stored energy. Okay, another way, tocopherol is one of the main fatty acids that the liver really loves. The liver is not so fascinated with B5 as much as it is with tocopherol. Now, what is tocopherol? Tocopherol is vitamin E. So I want to thank you guys for listening. There's a lot more of information that you can do with this. Oh, I'm sorry.